And that's the leading.
We're live now.
There you go.
Okay, we are live. Thank you everyone for joining us. You're watching Stand Up Fight Back, where we discuss strategy and analysis for the progressive movement. I'm Margot Pies, one of your co hosts on the show. I'm a scientist, engineer, and occasional journalist. And over here is the wonderful Carlos Marroquin. He's an amazing grassroots organizer. He's doing lots of work, especially with regard to hunger in the United States. And he's building lots of projects all around the country to help people through these, as usual, difficult times. Carlos, welcome,
Well,
co
good
host.
everybody watching us from. I am here actually just literally arrived back to California. I was over in Florida, so glad to be home. And I'm very exhausted. As you can imagine, the change of times is always a little bit difficult, especially at my age. But I am happy. I'm excited. I'm inspired. I'm fired up because good things are happening all over the place. That's the reality is that there's a lot of good people that are doing such a great work at so many different levels, especially right now that is really needed. We are in desperate need of activism, of people being engaged, and people just, you know, falling in love with one another, with our communities, with our, with our people that are struggling, with the unhoused, with those people that are suffering because of lack of housing, or struggling to keep housing, a roof over their heads. I am so excited about those people that are pretty much standing in the gap and doing whatever they can to help our fellow citizens. So very happy to be here on a Sunday, a beautiful, beautiful Sunday afternoon here in the city of Hollywood, California. By the way, Florida has also a Hollywood, so let's not mistake this. This is the Hollywood, my hometown, and very excited to be here, Margaret.
Well, it's good to have you here, Carlos. You've really been traveling a lot between California and Florida, I've noticed. So that's good. But well, I've been in California mostly, so I've been working here instead of in Georgia. But it's pretty hot. It's been hot today, but I think it's been hot all over the place, including in parts of Europe as well. And I was just looking at some images of one of the major rivers in France, and it's practically dried up, and some parts of the river totally dried up. It's incredible. It's these images. It's called the Loire, I think. It's Loire. So anybody is interested in taking a look, there's some recent pictures that were posted on Twitter of this river. And there's also the River Thames, the Thames, famous Thames River that goes through London in England. That bridge, I mean, that river as well, is facing low water levels, and the starting location, the source of that river, has actually shifted downstream by a certain number of miles. So that's also because the it's so hot that the it's creating these droughts and not a lot of rainfall. So this is this is all pretty much a result of climate change, and we expect that to continue. So it's kind of scary to see it happening so quickly. I don't think anybody really comprehends or realizes how quickly all of this was going to happen. I don't think anybody really imagined that we would start seeing all these rivers starting to dry up in Europe in 2022. So that's sort of what's going on right now with the climate. And tangentially related to the climate is the Inflation Reduction Act, which just passed, Carlos, in the Senate. And that is really, so that's the Senate's response to the Build Back Better legislation that was in the House. And this legislation is a compromise bill that Joe Manchin and Chuck Schumer agreed on without engaging Kristen Sinema, apparently, and she was upset about that. And Bernie Sanders was not too thrilled with the legislation. He tried, as I understand, he tried to, he did propose an amendment to improve some of the things that he thought were lacking, especially on the social welfare side, the healthcare stuff. And Carlos, I think you were telling me that it was like a 99-1 vote on his amendment.
He was the only vote that voted for it. But look, what we have right now is we have a money bill. This is his bill. It is shaped according to what he wanted. So let's not be fooled by this. And yes, it is a victory for the Democratic Party, but it's not the victory that he desired. It's far from it. We're talking about a huge difference between what it was proposed months ago, a year ago, over a year ago, to what it is now. It is a watered down to pretty much to the agreement of Manchin. This is what he wanted. It's not a great bill. There are some good things in there, let's face it, but it's nothing that we should be celebrating about, because the fact of the matter is that there is a lot more that needs to be done. When we're talking about the amount of money that they are dedicating to climate change, it is minute to the kind of resources we need to be putting into climate change. It is a start. It is a beginning. But like anything else, this is what I'm always afraid of when we start celebrating up as to something that the Democratic Party does, is that they get content with what they have. They pretty much are high-fiving each other, patting themselves in the back, while the whole world goes to pieces. You know, for crying out loud, this should just be the beginning. And the problem is that, you know, this is exactly the kind of actions the Democratic Party, you know, celebrate about and pretty much are satisfied with. We are not going to see nothing else being done for the next 2, 3 years, 4 years, 6 years, because again, this is the most they could do. That's a concern. We have to see it for what it is. It is a concern. The only person that was extremely happy right now was Manchin. He was celebrating. It's his bill. This is Manchin's bill. And he's the one that derailed the whole agenda of President Biden. He's the one that derailed the whole agenda of actually doing something significant, you know what I mean, for the American people. He derailed that. And now trying to make things happen because elections are very near, and most likely, you know, according to some of the polls, Democrats may retain the Senate and may retain the House, and his power is pretty much begun. So I think it's a very calculated move by Manchin. That's my personal opinion. I may be wrong. I am known to be wrong from time to time. But the fact of the matter is that if you look at everything that is being offered, it's pretty much a Band-Aid of what it was supposed to be done. You know, we need to be aggressive with climate change. You know, there has to be a lot more that needs to be done. Even if they were to dedicate, you know, a couple $1 trillion to climate change, is not enough, people. This is very serious. When we look at what's happening with climate change, it is serious. And a few $1 billion is not going to cut it. I'm going to say that right now. It's not going to cut it. You know, it's a nice gesture. It's a nice, you know, step forward, but it's not the answer. It's far from the answer. We need to totally get away from fossil fuels. We're talking about the year 2030. That's what they're talking about. Some of these changes should be implemented. Why do they always push it a year, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? For crying out loud, this is an emergency now. We need to do things now. We need to be aggressive. And again, I understand the political climate. I understand we don't have the votes. I understand the Democratic Party has to bend backwards to satisfy Munchin so that he can do something and make it look like we've done something huge. We haven't, people. That's the reality. And I know some of you are going to get upset at me because you're saying, oh, you're going against the Democratic Party. I'm going against the lack of action by the party that claims to be, supporting, the will of the people. We have to be aggressive, people. We got to demand for more. We cannot just be tiptoeing around the tulips when the whole world is falling apart.
Had myself on mute. Yeah, it's this bill it's kind of a weird bill. It's not really it's sort of a win, and it's not clear how much of a loss it is, because there are some really troubling things that were left in the legislation, at least on the climate side. I haven't really analyzed the prescription drug stuff or the Medicare things that Bernie mentioned, but I've looked into the climate segment of it. And, there's these leases that we talked about. Well, that stayed in the bill. That was not removed because I don't think there was any way that this legislation was going to be passed without those offshore and onshore ties to oil and gas leases. It's like the size of Michigan. I think that's what I heard Bernie described of, like the total amount of available offshore and onshore land that they could use was like on the scale of an entire state, like the state of Michigan. So it's a massive amount of land, that a publicly owned land, that they're basically giving away to the fossil fuel industry if they want it, which is a crazy thing too. And an aspect of that I think we really haven't talked about is this idea that public land is up for grabs for private industry, or for the private fossil fuel industry. They're basically saying you can take whatever you want, and you can do whatever you want with this publicly held land. And I think that is to me a bigger deal than I think maybe we're making it out to be, even if they don't, because I think Bernie, I saw him give us a little speech, and he said something like, this is more than they could ever use. But even though it's more than they could ever use, I mean, it's still putting up what is supposed to be the public's land up for grabs for the private sector to do whatever they want without our say on it. And I think that is like, it's the continuation of this neoliberal paradigm of basically deregulation and, privatize everything, the ownership of land, privatize what is done on that, who has a say on what is done on that land. I think that is still a very neoliberal policy that we're seeing there. So that, that's concerning, that offshore leasing. There's been some analysis and modeling done around it. A guy named Jesse Jenkins, who's an energy policy guy in Princeton, he's been pretty enthusiastic about this legislation, and he has some a lab and a model that he used, and he estimated somewhere around a 40% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions of at the 2005 level going into, I think, like 2035. So that's his estimate, and he's got like a list of slides, but there's one slide where it kind of outlines the assumptions, and there's some pretty significant assumptions in there. There's a lot of hope around whether or not we can actually accelerate bringing online all of this renewable energy and connecting it to the electrical grid as well. And there's a lot of a backlog right now on bringing on renewable power to the electrical grid. So these are significant things that have to change in order to be able to bring on all of that potential gain that we're getting from this bill. So that's a little, that's something, that's a big if. We're hopeful that you can, that'll happen. Of course, you don't want to be like, naysaying it because it's not enough, but it still would be good to have that. But you have to move all, there's all these tax credits for electric vehicles and stuff. So there used to be tax credits and those are being depleted. So now we have some new tax credits for people to buy, to make electric vehicles more affordable. And I think for like heat pumps and things like that. So, you're bringing on things that used to run on natural gas or combustion engines, and you're putting them onto the electrical grid. So that means that you have to also be scaling out your electrical grid fast enough to meet the demand of all that extra all that extra electric vehicle power that's going to be needed. So these are significant challenges, and I don't know that we're going to be able to meet that even with the legislation, but hopefully. There's also a lot of money in there earmarked towards hydrogen fuel and CCS, carbon capture storage, which both I think are mixed bags, because what the CCS does in this case is extend the lifetime of the fossil fuel industry and coal plants, and we don't really necessarily want to do that. Or we don't necessarily want to do rely on that for too long. And also, I don't know at what scale the CCS is at right now. Like, how scalable is it to all the fossil fuel industry that's out there? Because there is a lot to capture. And I don't know what happens after these incentives expire in 10 years. Will they continue to operate CCS if they're not getting a tax break? So those are important questions that we have to raise and figure out if those benefits are really realistic in that regard. So, and then hydrogen, hydrogen is, I used to be really excited about hydrogen when I was a kid. In high school, I got a little hydrogen fuel cell, and I thought, oh, it'd be so cool to have a car that ran on hydrogen because it just sounds really awesome. But the thing is that in order to have green hydrogen, you have to use water. And so you're separating water molecules to get that hydrogen out of it to then transport around to wherever it needs, because it's supposed to basically replace oil and whatever fuel that we're using. And, my question is how much water does it need? What will be the water resources that it needs? And is that a sustainable practice? Because with climate change, like we started the show, there's 2 rivers right now that are really low. One of them is so low that the water is completely gone in much of the river in France. And this is a problem actually in France for cooling the nuclear plants that are along that river. So you see, there's this problem, and there's a climate scientist at the University of Michigan named Jonathan Overpeck, and I really like this guy. And what he said was, the climate crisis is a water crisis. So we're seeing examples of that already and what that means and how that's affecting our renewable or low carbon energy sources like nuclear and hydrogen. If hydrogen depends on water resources to make it green, because you're going to use water and renewable energy like solar and wind, if we're going to have more droughts, less water staying in large bodies of water for us to use, then how reliable is that hydrogen going to be? Which then pushes us towards more like gray hydrogen, which is created using natural gas, which I think it ultimately is what the fossil fuel industry would like. So they're talking about there's going to be a mix of different sources of hydrogen, but I don't think there's enough discussion around that. So those are both, so basically the CCS and the hydrogen stuff, those are both wins for the fossil fuel industry, I think. So Yeah, I mean, like the big fossil fuel companies seem to be really for the legislation. There's a lot of benefits for them in terms of their, their energy transition or their aims going to net zero, their plans basically, so that they stay alive, survive the energy transition. And for others, not so much, like the Koch brothers, the Koch industries were not really in support of the legislation. And apparently some Republicans were trying to get the fossil fuel industry to support their opposition to the bill, and they were struggling to find that opposition amongst the fossil fuel industry. So, there's, you're hearing voices amongst like climate policy people and who are like, yeah, this is great. And you're hearing voices from like the fossil fuel industry who are saying, yeah, this is great. So it's really a mixed bag. And one question that I really have is, where does this leave us? Let's assume that all other countries meet their goal for the Paris Climate Agreement around maintaining 1.5 degrees Celsius. Does this legislation put us on track to meet our goals and our commitments for maintaining 1.5 degrees Celsius? And I don't know. I haven't gotten a clear answer on that. And I saw in Jesse Jenkins' slides where he made a comparison in terms of emission reductions, and he compared Build Back Better, the Inflation Reduction Act, and something called Net Zero Policy Pathway. And I'm not really too clear on what he calls the Net Zero Pathway, but I assume that the Net Zero Pathway was supposed to get us to 1.5 degrees Celsius by 20, and that's net zero by 2050. The Build Back Better and this Inflation Reduction Act are woefully short in emission reductions in comparison. So the question then is, where do we end up? Are we going to pass 1.5 degrees Celsius and hit 2 degrees Celsius? Is that what's going to happen? Because if that does happen, then this bill is really nothing to celebrate, but I don't know. My guess is that this bill is not enough for us to keep that.
The concern that everybody has is that we have delay in any kind of climate action, significantly, that things gotten worse. So even if they are introducing these new bills and these new proposals, we got pushed back so much that it's going to be harder for us to get to where we need to be. And that's almost like common sense. The longer you allow things to go the wrong way, the harder it's going to become to get it where it needs to be. And that, I think, is the concern that I hear a lot from I read from the scientific community, is that we have crossed every threshold that of warning that needed to be crossed. That should not have been crossed. We have crossed those lines that they have drawn. So again, the concern, and this is why we are saying, and this is why we are very aggressively, denouncing, this legislature as not enough, is the fact that, we have allowed it to get so bad that, what they are proposing to do right now is not enough. Yes, it's a start. Yes, it's going to get us something, but not where we need to be, because we have allowed it to get that bad. Mm-hmm. It's almost like the best sample that I can give you, and everybody can agree on this, when we have allowed the unhoused, crisis to become this bad. It doesn't matter how much money you try to throw at right now. You know what I mean? It's not enough to wait, because it's gotten so bad, and it affected so many people, and it created all the crises that now trying to get things back on track is becoming so difficult. Yeah. So difficult. And what they are proposing right now is almost laughable, because everybody knows that, you cannot just get somebody and put them inside of a house and expect them to rehabilitate. You have years and years of pretty much ignoring the problem. And all of a sudden you throw a few billion and you expect it to be okay. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
That's what we are talking about. I think that, again, they are not being realistic. They're out of touch. And they are celebrating the wrong thing. They need to be sober-minded. They need to be saying, what we want to hear is them saying, this is a small step in what we need to do. And we're not going to celebrate until we get our act together. That's the kind of leadership we want to hear. That's the kind of, that's something that I will respect. Because now you're acknowledging the level of problem that exists when it comes to climate change. So this is no time right now for high-fiving, patting yourself in the back, and celebrating. This is time to remind us that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And if we don't continue, in taking these steps more often, you know what I mean? All we're going to do is spend money and pretty much throw it into the wind because nothing is going to be done.
Yeah. I mean, there are some nice things, obviously, necessary things, far overdue. The tax incentives, and also, they kept that 15% tax bracket for corporate tax that was in the original Build Back Better. So that's a nice thing. There's something that is fixed a little bit in terms of the type of subsidies that go to the renewable energy industry. So, there are things, these are good. They're pushing us in the right direction, but the question is it enough? I don't think it's enough, which is really unfortunate. And I think it's really sad that it's, they're really saying like, oh, this is the most comprehensive climate legislation ever, major climate legislation to ever pass. And people are really celebrating that. I know like Leah Stokes is, and she's a climate policy person at, I think, the University of Santa Barbara.
But they're calling this a historic moment. But
and I think
also remind that we have historic crises that are happening. Never seen.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing is like they're really celebrating it, but it's so small. Like it's really sad that this is the best thing we can do, and we're going to celebrate that. Oh, we got climate policy, but we got it as a compromise with a lot of ifs, a lot of things that are unclear. Like, can this actually happen fast enough? And will this incentivize the transition? Because you are basically, aside from that methane fee, you are giving a lot to the fossil fuel industry. And there's like funding hydrogen. I don't know. I don't think, my guess is just because this was a deal with Manchin, that there's nothing specific in that legislation that says this has got to go towards green hydrogen research. It's just going towards hydrogen. And like I said, hydrogen can be produced many different ways. There's that blue hydrogen, which it was blue hydrogen. I said gray hydrogen earlier. Blue hydrogen, that's the fossil fuel one that's run off of natural gas. So you need fossil fuels to produce that hydrogen. So, this is not like this is being celebrated as a breakthrough, but it does come at a huge expense, and it does prop up the fossil fuel industry, and it doesn't really give them a timeline as to when they're going to stop producing fossil fuels. So it seems to me like fossil fuels are going to be around. We're going to be using fossil fuels until we run out, I think. Or until the energy prices get so high because there's too much demand and not enough supply, which from some perspectives, including economist Steve Keen, that we are nearing the end of our supply. And I was just listening to Steve Keen, and I don't know if their audience is really familiar with him. He's an economist. He's like a post-Keynesianist, sort of MMTer, who's pretty well known, I think, or at least sort of well known in progressive circles. And he's kind of thinking like by the end of the decade, like maybe in 10 years, or maybe a little bit more than the end of the decade, but like some around there, like we may really face some serious energy crises because of not enough supply of oil. So when we get to that point, people will panic, or governments will panic, just like you're seeing now, Carlos, where governments are panicking around Russia putting pressure and cutting off access to their natural gas pipelines to Europe, especially Germany. And in response, the panicked response is, well, we gotta bring back coal. So, that's something that could actually happen in the future. So on the one hand, maybe the CCS isn't that bad for that dystopian scenario, right? Because we may end up in that position. But, I don't know if the subsidies will still be there, what if that should happen. So, we're facing some major crises, and like you said, historic crises. And we just passed legislation that we can sort of say, yeah, we needed some of these things, but that is definitely not enough. And it's sort of like these are no-brainer things that we should have had all along. And the fact that this is the best we can do says a lot about the situation we're in politically. So that part's really unfortunate. I mean, really want to celebrate something, right, Carlos? You want to celebrate it.
Look, and I don't want to sound like
so
for what I mean and stuff but I'm just trying to look with a sober mind as to the reality that we are facing. That's what I'm trying to look. And if we say that we are in a state of emergency, well, let's act like it. Let's our actions show that we are exactly saying, what we mean.
We need Biden to declare a climate emergency. That would be nice, because then we could start doing like this, really taking those big steps to take action and to reduce our fossil fuel dependency, and to move on to renewable energy and to do something more. But I think with this legislation now, I don't think Biden is going to feel the pressure to declare a climate emergency now. I think he's going to be able to say like, yeah, no, we passed this bill. It's got the biggest climate legislation ever to come through Congress.
And that's exactly what I'm afraid of. That's exactly what I'm afraid of. That they will act like, well, we did a historic action on climate change. We need not to do nothing else. That's exactly what I'm afraid of.
Yeah.
And again, there has to be a series of actions that need to be taking place in order for us just to get us back to a decent state, of the situation, on handling what's going on. And I'm afraid we're not, even with this action. That's just, again, what I'm hearing from some of the climate experts. Yes, like I say, there are good things here, but we need to pay attention. We need to keep paying attention, and the pressure should continue. We should not, let down our guards, because then we have midterm elections. We have 2024, and what the Republicans are going to try to do. The Republicans, they're going to try to push back and repeal all this stuff, and they're going to try to take back and move back the clock. And see, that's why we have to be like super, super aggressive and get stuff in motion. We got to get things going, so that even if they were to come into power, it would be hard for them to stop this, because they don't care about climate. They don't believe in climate change. So we have to take that responsibility, and we have to create situations and actions that keeps us going. Because when they come back to power, if they come back to power, and some of them will come into power, they will make it very difficult. Manchin is one of the problems. But there are many more Munchins out there that will stop any legislation from taking place that will bring significant change to what is needed right now in this world. So that's just an opinion here that is being echoed, or we are echoing the opinions of others, of experts that have shown a lot of concern on this. And more discussion we're gonna be sharing on this as things develop.
Right, of course, yeah. And
Right.
something else to add in there, that my understanding is that in order to get Kristen Sinema on board, they kept the loophole, a tax loophole, in for hedge funds. I mean, you know, who elected her? Did the hedge funds elect her, or did the people of Arizona elect her? She's, where are the hedge funds located? Are they located in Arizona? Last I checked, the majority of hedge funds are located in New York, in Manhattan. So I don't know. I don't know who her constituents are, but it doesn't seem like it's the actual people. It seems to me that she has, I don't know what the heck happened with her, but she has completely aligned herself with Wall Street, and she managed to get this loophole in, which it was supposed to be closed, and now it's not. And so it's basically a tax break for wealthy hedge fund managers. So that's great.
Well,
So yeah, it's crazy. You know what it is? It's like this bill is like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, maybe 2 steps back sometimes in some situations, And poor Bernie, trying this darnest to, apparently he's the only real progressive in Congress, in the Senate anyway, because even Elizabeth Warren didn't get behind the amendment. And I thought she was a progressive. I guess she's not. I don't know what she is.
well, and it depends what time of the day is and what time of the year and what.
Yeah.
Look,
Yeah.
the thing is that we are lacking. We're not bold enough, and those are the realities. More needs to be done, but we're keeping an eye. And we're going to be critical of the Democratic Party, not because we like to pick on them, but because they need to be. We need to be critical. We need to hold them accountable. The Republican Party is pretty much, they sold out. They don't even hide where they're coming from. I have a concern when you say you stand for something and then you don't. That's why we become very critical. If you say you stand for the people, well, stand for the people. Show us your vote. And that's what we become very critical of the Democratic Party, because if you claim to be for something and then you vote against, everything you claim to be for, then, we got to show your hypocrisy, and we got to show where you are disconnected from reality and from the people. So we want to hold people accountable. We want strong leadership. That's what we want. We are demanding strong leadership. We are demanding changes. Our kids, pretty much deserve that. We owe it to them. We owe it to the future, generations. And so if someone took an oath of office, they need to be held accountable, regardless of who it is. And more so, if you claim to, and you have advocated, or at least you have campaigned for certain things, then we're going to hold you more accountable, because that's what you claim. I didn't claim that for you. You claimed that for yourself. So we're going to hold you accountable. So don't get upset at us when we are calling you out because you are selling out to hedge funds or to the oil industry or to whoever, to the health insurance companies. So more needs to be done at every level. We agree on that. And Margaret, we can talk about this all night long about this issue and what has happened here. But let's take a moment right now to acknowledge the fact that had it not been for Bernie pushing for these issues, you know what I mean? We'd be talking about something else. Bernie has been standing in the gap, and he has been pushing for these very things for a long, long time. So if anybody should get any credit of anything good that has come out of this, is Bernie Sanders, because he's the one that pushed the needle forward. Not Manchin, not Schumer, not Pelosi, not nobody else. It was Bernie Sanders. Has always been Bernie Sanders. So he deserves anything good that comes out of any of these policies. Bernie Sanders deserves it because he's the one that has been pushing. He's the one that has inspired the young people to activate. We have the movement of the young people on climate change because of Bernie Sanders. So we celebrate him. We celebrate Bernie Sanders, good old Bernie Sanders.
Hey, he was, again, the only senator to try to amend the bill to make it better. And I think that deserves a lot of credit.
And the rich, and to tax the rich. And they're afraid of that. Oh my God,
Not a single Democrat in the Senate was willing to support that. I mean, it says everything about who's in the Senate. There's only one real progressive in the Senate, and that's Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
That's it. It's just Bernie. He's there by himself. And, it'd be great to have more progressives in that.
Church, all kinds of smack, and bragging about this, bragging about that. Is like, dude, where you been? You're a senator. You're a you are a U.S. senator, and you call yourself progressive. Where have you been?
My dogs they're saying the same thing. Where have you been, Ruff? I mean, yeah, it just shows a lot about, when Bernie ran in 2020, because first of all, nobody thought Bernie had a chance in 2016, and he completely proved everybody wrong. So when he ran again for 2020, now he had this credibility, and all of the other Democrats who were running in the primaries had to pick up some of his language to appeal to his base, to appeal to us. And when it came down to it, none of those people, a lot of them were senators who ran, none of them supported his amendment. None of them have supported, really, in practice, any progressive ideas that were on Bernie's platform. These aren't really, they're not really socialist, extreme left ideas that Bernie was running on. He was literally running on the economic Bill of Rights that Roosevelt introduced in the 40s or 30s. So it's like old ideas,
Right.
Old ideas that were once supported in this country.
Yeah.
And there's nothing special about it. It's just like classic social democracy stuff, like in Europe. There's really no reason why we can't have that here. But the senators, they don't, when it comes down to it, none of them really supported this. But of course, yeah, you're right. I mean, if without Bernie and without the momentum that he had, and the thing about Bernie is that he spoke to something that everybody knew or wanted, but didn't necessarily know how to express. Or there was no politician or somebody at that level who is willing to say, we need these things.
Right.
And so if Bernie had not stepped into that role, we may not have the few things that remain from Build Back Better. Yeah.
Well, Bernie Sanders was connecting with people. He connects with people. He speaks to the heart of people. When he talks about the issues that affects, the healthcare of people understand, because they are the ones that have to fork out the bill and have to make decisions whether they're able to buy, medicine or food for their families. Bernie was speaking to those issues. When he's talking about the cost of education, he's been calling that out for a long time, because people are slave to student debt, to their debt. When he spoke about, when he's been speaking about climate, change and the issues that affect this, he's being on target. When he's talking about Wall Street, he's been calling them out for what they are. They are fraud. Their business model is fraud. And Bernie Sanders has been calling them out. So issue after issue after issue, he connected with people and people understood. And this is why even a lot of Republicans supported him.
No. Yeah.
Even,
he had a lot of the rural vote where it's a lot of white working class people. He took a lot of that rural population with him in a lot of the primaries. So he's somebody who's able to reach across the entire working class, the entire spectrum of the working class, and get support. So yeah, he's truly that kind of candidate. But of course, very dangerous to the ruling class and the capitalists. To unite the working class. Don't you dare unite the working class. Right. Don't unite labor. Else we're in trouble.
I remember being interviewed by some members of the media, and Bernie Sanders was speaking to them as well, because the media was experiencing a lot of cuts, of their employment and piling up more work. Mm-hmm. So I remember when the media used to come out to cover a story, they used to have a sound guy, they used to have a camera guy, they used to have a producer right there. It was a team that show up. Now, when they go cover a story, it's one person doing everything.
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders was speaking to them, and a lot of them understood that he stood for every working individual out there, regardless of whether the profession was. He stood for the working class. He stood for unions. He has always stood for unions. He's pro-labor, and this is the reason why he was, or he is, a very dangerous person in the eyes of the oligarchy, of the billionaire class, of corporations. Because Bernie Sanders inspires these people. He inspires people to unionize. And now we have so many people out there trying to form unions. He inspired young people to run for office. And this scares the liver out of the establishment, because a lot of these young people are winning. They're taking over city councils. They're becoming Congress people, little by little. And it scares the liver out of them, because why? They're carrying the same message that Bernie Sanders, has been pushing for, the same agenda, the agenda of the people. Mm-hmm. And what does the establishment have to offer? The same talking points. Nothing. A lot of mumbling, a lot of words with nothing behind it. Yet Bernie Sanders is actually calling the things where they need to be called. So, look, we're going to continue to be excited, because there are more people being inspired. There are more people running. There's more activists out there in the streets, on communities. Like I say, I just came back from Florida, gone to so many different states, talking to people, meeting with community leaders, and they all are organizing. They understand that it's up to us. We cannot depend on our elected officials, because they have failed us. So the people are taking it upon themselves to organize their communities. And that's where it's at. That's how we're going to win, is because we are taking care of ourselves, taking care of our communities, taking care of our people, taking care of our seniors, taking care of our children, of our students, of our labor force. We are taking care of business. We are the ones supporting small businesses and fighting for them. We are against gentrification. We are against all the greed of developers and what they're trying to do to our cities, to our communities. We are the ones pushing back, not the elected officials. They're going along with it. They are in the pockets of every developer. They are in the pockets of the real estate business and industry. But we have people that are fighting out there. day in, day out. They are out there, proposing and fighting for rent control. They are fighting for public banking, better banking solutions, not the same old Wall Street that defrauds the people. So we should be very excited about a lot of things, and I think that we are in the right path. It gets hard. It's tough sometimes because everybody's against us. The media is against us. The oligarchy is against us. The billionaire class against us. Politicians are against us. We just got to keep moving forward. You know what I mean? That's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of us organizing, coming together, and taking care of our communities.
Yeah, they are, and they're doing a very good job of making it difficult, but people keep trying, and that's the most important thing. We have to keep trying, have to keep organizing, keep working at the local level, because that we can be very effective at the local level. So we have to keep really working on that. And like I've said this so many times, the Republican Party has done a really fantastic job of taking over their political system from the bottom up, from the local level, like the book banning and things like that, and the critical race theory nonsense, and all of that is because they have gone in and tried to take over their local offices, their local boards, and they're having success doing it. And we have to do that as well. We have to take the same playbook and execute that ourselves if we want to really make change. So as much as today we were focused on national politics and looking at this legislation, the Inflation Reduction Act, and seeing how, at that level, it's really a compromise. Everything's yes, but kind of situation, and not very clear. And the difficulty of getting like any other senator in, to be a progressive is really challenging. So really focusing on the bottom up, the grassroots level up, I think is a little bit more effective for us right now to try to enact change in a faster time frame than dealing with this incredible inaction at the federal level. So yes, I'm hoping more people, more progressives, more people who care about climate change will start to really look inward, look locally, look around in their community, and ask, how can I at least improve what's going on in my community in terms of climate change and the ecology, the environment, and make that more sustainable. How do I make my community more sustainable? So I think I'm hoping that we can have that, because hopefully that balances out some of the inequity, the inadequacies of what's playing out on Capitol Hill and in the White House.
Right. So it's going to happen. I mean, like I say, I'm excited because I see a lot of organizing taking place. I think that the Republican Party, as good as they organize, and they picked up a lot of insight as to what we, the progressives, have been doing, the grassroots. So they began to mobilize at a grassroots level. And in the meantime, we have the Democratic Party that's still, organizing in 20th century style. They're way behind. They need to come back to the grassroots level. And I think that's where it's at. But we're not going to be waiting for them. We're going to continue to organize. We're going to continue to do what we need to do. And there are lessons that we have learned over the years. And right now we are at a critical moment in time that we cannot afford to sit down. We cannot afford to do that. We got to keep pressing on. And we got to keep inspiring people. And we got to keep showing up. We got to keep doing what we know it works. And we know it works. That we know. So, if there's a message we want to leave with the people tonight, because we're already out of time again, Margaret, is the fact that organizing works. Organizing at the grassroots level works. And we got to keep doing that. We got to double down, triple down on that, because, we have nothing else. We have no money. We have no resources. All we got is ourselves, and that's all we need. We are the power of the people. And the power of the people, you know what I mean, is the one that gets things done because, again, is the unity that brings the strength.
Yeah, I think there's a song by John Lennon. It goes, "Power to the people. Power to the people." Hey, I think didn't Bernie used to play that at his rallies?
Yeah, well, we play a little bit of everything.
Yeah, we were that close. For a moment there, we had it.
Looking forward, I cannot, there's so much that we learned from Bernie, from his campaign, organizing, the people that he brought together. A lot of us are still good friends. We learned together, we cried together, we fought together, we mobilized together. There's a lot of stuff that we did. It's a lot of, and we made some mistakes, but those were learning processes. But we keep looking forward. That's the beauty of this, is that, at least I'm going to speak for myself. I don't have time to be looking down, and I have no time to be looking back. I got to keep moving forward because I see the needs that are out there and how people are depending on the work that we do. So we got to keep pressing on. And if so-and-so is standing by my right hand or my left hand, that's beautiful. But if not, we got to just keep moving on because someone else will step in. And that's usually what happens. Mm-hmm. We are not here to criticize why people don't get involved or anything. Everything is up to your own conviction. I don't expect everybody to be like me. I move because of my own personal conviction that I feel inside my heart, inside, my being. That's why I do things. I don't do it because, it looks good or whatever. You know what I mean? I could care less about all that. We're doing it because this is the right thing to do. And I have, I have people in front of me. I see our young people. I see our seniors. I see our workers. And this is what moves me. I'm moving for them. So, whatever people decide to do with their lives, that's on them. But I can tell you this, that there is not greater satisfaction than when you do things for other people. And if you feel depressed, oppressed, or any kind of press that you may feel, when you start putting your focus on someone else and start doing things for other people, all that oppression is lifted. All the depression is lifted. All those things that gives you so much pressure in your own personal life is lifted because you no longer are looking to your own problems. You are doing things for other people. That lifts you up. It's healthy. Helping other people is healthy.
Well, thank you, Carlos. Thank you for that sermon. I think we'll leave off there as our final thought for the evening. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. You've been watching Stand Up, Fight Back, where we discuss strategy and analysis for the progressive movement. I'm Margot Pius, one of your co-hosts on the show, and this is Carlos Marroquin, the other co-host on the show. We air every Sunday, or most Sundays, at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. We're on Facebook and YouTube, so please make sure you follow us, subscribe, share us with all of your friends, because we're here and we're talking about progressive politics and we are not clickbaity. So the YouTube algorithms don't really like us in that regard. But I think we have something to bring to the table that people like Jimmy Dore or Katie Helper don't necessarily bring to the table. So if you like what we're doing, please share us with your friends. Let them know that we're here. And we'll see you again next week. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. And we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
We love you guys.
Take care. Oop, and I'm having a little bit of trouble with my mouse. There we go.